Chapter 5, Freedom of Expression, Part 3 of 4, Controlling Access to Information on the Internet. The learning outcomes include identify problems and solutions regarding laws put in place to protect children online, evaluate Internet censorship around the world, and evaluate the limits of anonymity online. As the Internet began to grow, people realized that there might be a need for someone to control how information was accessed on the Internet. Thus, the Telecommunications Act was passed in 1996. Its purpose was to allow better competition, more open competition among phone, cable, and TV companies. It was supposed to reduce regulation, encourage new business growth. It was originally for TV, telephone, and radio. Then, at about the same time, the Internet started to become more popular. Congress saw that the Internet might be a good tool to deliver education as well as communicate with constituents about political ideology and views. So they wanted to have legislation that would promote more use of the Internet over time. They also wanted to ensure that only those people who were able or who were adults and were eligible to look at sexually explicit sites were the ones that were going there and not children. Title V of the Act was created specifically to address decency on the Internet, although it's been difficult to define since then and even today. The Communications Decency Act is part of Title V. It aims to protect children from pornography. Section 230 provides immunity to providers that may publish user-generated content as long as they are not an editor or providing content. Providers aren't liable even when they receive notification. And this was set up so that you would have people who would agree to provide service and provide content, allow more people to interact together, and that they were not treated as a publisher for legal purposes. As Congress and our executive and judicial branches began looking at how to protect children on the Internet, they had to strike a balance between what is legal and community standards. One tool that came about was filters. We still have those today. And here they may block access to websites that are inappropriate or offensive. Filters may obviously mean different things for a home network with small children as opposed to a K through 12 educational institution or a college or community college or technical college campus. But they try to block what people should not be looking at within the context of that organization. The Child Online Protection Act, it did provide penalties or punishment for exposing minors to harmful content on the web. However, like many of the acts that were passed to protect children, the Supreme Court ruled that COPA, Child Online Protection Act, to be unconstitutional. The Children's Internet Protection Act is more recently passed. It requires schools and libraries that receive federal funding to block access to obscene material, pornography, and anything harmful to minors. United States versus American Library Association in 2003 did look at the the Child Protection Act that allowed libraries and educational institutions to install filters, the Supreme Court ruled that Congress did have the authority to require public schools and libraries who were receiving federal discounts to install filtering software. The justices admitted that filters might overblock, but there was a way for people to disable the filtering software upon request if they were eligible to view material. Since the government was providing funding, they were entitled to define how these funds could be used and under what conditions. The courts thus found that libraries don't violate First Amendment rights by using filtering software. This is one of the few laws that has actually been able to stand up to First Amendment rights. And this did reverse the decision of the district court. Internet censorship is indeed an interesting topic, a challenging topic. When we refer to censorship, it's just keeping people away from certain material and allowing them to access certain material according to the goals of the country, of the organization, or laws that may apply within one organization or country. Access to certain websites may be prohibited or limited. Access to content that might be inappropriate, however that's defined, may be limited. Not allowing people to search for certain keywords might be one way that government will control the internet. Tracking the internet activities of people, something that most every country has to some extent done in the past. And in some countries, including the U.S., you could be jailed or certainly come under suspicion for your internet activities. Of course, some countries have different laws, different rules, different customs, different cultural considerations, and what might jail you in one country may be considered free speech in another. If you look at this map, you can see the websites that are visited by different countries. Many of these countries, you'll see a burgundy-ish color, including the U.S. In those cases, it means that Google is the top site visited. Oftentimes, if we're Western-looking or U.S. focused, we forget that there may be others who use different software. In fact, if you look at green, Baidu in China is the top search engine with over 1 billion people that might use it each day. Baidu has more users than Google does. Google wasn't willing to meet the needs of the Chinese government to censor material on the web as they chose to do. Google chose not to do that, and so thus emerged Baidu. You may want to be anonymous on the internet. You may not want everyone to know what you're searching for, what you're doing, what your purchases may be, how much money you have in the bank, what sort of loans you have through your bank, what sort of credit cards you have available, what balances you carry, where you live, what taxes you pay, how many children you have. You may want to remain anonymous. It's getting harder and harder to do that. But there are ways you can try to. You can have an ID that doesn't indicate who you are, gives no indication who you are, and then you're able to freely express yourself without feeling that you're going to be that something will be done against you. You're also freer to say things that you might not would say were you not anonymous. Doxing, which we'll look at in just a minute or two, is where people go out and gather information that's perfectly legal. Gather information on people that's perfectly legal, compile it together, and sell it or freely share it with others on the internet. There are ways you can protect your email and have it encrypted on both ends. And usually the person you're sending the message with has to have encrypted email as well. There are ways that you can improve the ability of your email to be more private. Generally, just assume that others are able to read your emails. There are texting apps like Signal, for instance, that will allow you to have encrypted end-to-end text messages between you and someone else who has the app. And there are other apps that will let you help you anonymize your information online. Data brokers go out and gather that data. That's perfectly legal. It may cost them a small fee, or they may access a database for a certain amount of time to get the information they need. Arrest records, business directories, social media, which many of that you allow people to search anyway, and other public records, marriage licenses, births and death notices, things like that are legal but not completely free and easy to gather, but inexpensive and allowed to be gathered. Doxing goes a little farther. In this case, you're trying to let others know who someone is, how to contact them. This has been done with political campaigns where a candidate will give an opponent's personal cell phone number, for instance. It's been done by groups that are opposed to the Westboro Baptist Church, where their names and addresses have been exposed. It's been done by PlayStation Network users who are part of these social activists online, like WikiLeaks and Anonymous, and they didn't want their buddies, their hacker buddies, to shut down PlayStation Network over the holiday break. So they published names, addresses, and phone numbers of 9 or 10 of the people organizing a hack, and almost all of them were wanted by the federal government, and the feds showed up on their doorstep and arrested them. Unfortunately for those who had outed their former buddies, there were others who stepped in and still made the network go down. Here you can have many personal details exposed. They may ask you to pay a certain amount to keep that data from being released, as the Ashley Madison case did. And to its credit, Ashley Madison did not pay the ransom, and the people saying they were going to release the names if they weren't paid did indeed release the names. I encourage you to take a look at this short video from 60 Minutes, where it gives you a little more information on data brokers and online tracking. Sometimes organizations know that someone's doing something to them that's inappropriate, illegal, but they don't know who it is. In those cases, they may be eligible to bring forward a John Doe lawsuit. Here, the organization or the person or the entity brings forward a case against a defendant who they don't know right now. The person they're trying to find is communicating using many of the tools we were talking about to remain anonymous. When the identity is determined, then the organization, entity, person puts the name of, in place of John Doe, will put the person's real name. The person bringing forward a suit can ask the court to issue a subpoena and require a person to appear, so then they can determine who it is. If the permission is given, then any person who might have information, any third party, that may have information about the identity of the defendant may be required to share the subpoena or share the information with you. You must issue the subpoena in good faith and not just do it as you go on a fishing expedition. To summarize, it is difficult to protect vulnerable groups online, like children, without infringing on adults' First Amendment rights. All countries censor internet searching. Some just do it more than others. Laws have been put into place to ensure that U.S. citizens have the freedom of speech to express opinions about an organization. And there is little anonymity online.